Hello and welcome. Now in this video I want to explore a drawing technique that we can use when drawing something in our sketchbook. So this is handy when you want a way of interpreting drawing an object of some description that basically contrasts both a very loose, flowing, quick, fluid style with a more detailed, fine detail layer. So you're going to need a page in your sketchbook. You can work small, you can work large. I would suggest having a medium to thick quality paper, just because we are going to be using some ink and you don't necessarily want your paper to buckle. But if all you've got is very thin paper, please don't worry, crack on anyway. You're going to need some form of drawing ink. Now I've got some watercolour inks, I've got acrylic ink here, and also Winsor & Newton Indian ink as well. So you can just go with pure black, or you can choose a colour that actually fits with your subject matter. It's completely up to you. You need paintbrush, water, paint palette, and then you'll need some kind of fine line drawing material. So a fine liner pen, or I quite like using a fountain pen with black ink in it as well to go over the top. Okay, so you may want to do this in 2 sessions or 2 sittings, or you can just go for it in one go. So I'm going to do a couple of demonstrations just to kind of explain the general principle, but layer 1 is all about creating a loose, fluid, very quick impression of an object. So I've got a couple of things in front of me I'm going to be looking to do. So first of all, I've got my angle poise lamp that lives in the studio. So I'm going to do a quick impression of my angle poise lamp, just using a fairly thick watercolour brush and taking a little bit of the ink. I'm going to put it in a palette and I'm going to just loosen it down, water it down slightly. There we go. And I might just add in a tiny bit of yellow as well, because my lamp is kind of mustard colour. It's one of my favourite colours at the moment, mustard or ochre. Great. So I'm not too worried about the colour. All I'm going to do is just very quickly and loosely I might go slightly bigger actually looking at this. Hopefully you can still see. Let me just move that up slightly. I'm just going to do a very quick impression. So I've got the base. Oh, that's a lovely colour. I've got the base of the lamp, and then I've got my kind of 3 little angles. So I've got 1, 2, that bit, got a little bit there. So I'm not, again, this is going quite quick, haven't quite captured this bit right at the bottom, but never mind, we'll get that detail later on. And then at the top here, I've got the actual shape, and I'll share an image of my angle poise lamp so that you can see what it is I'm actually drawing. So what I've done here is just captured a very, very quick impression, trying to get some of the main elements of the actual lamp itself. So very rough, very sketchy. Okay, so that took me, what, 30 seconds, a minute to kind of do. Again, very rough, very quick. The detail will be filled in later on. Okay, I'm fiddling now, aren't I, as I talk? Always find it's quite easy to overdraw. Okay, so that is my number 1 image. So that is my first one I've done, my angle poise lamp. I'm just going to give that a few moments to dry. The ink here is a little bit wet, so I'm going to give this a few moments to dry. But in the meantime, I'm going to create a second one, and I'm just going to use black ink this time. I'm going to put the lid back on here. I always find it's good to put the lids back on things, otherwise I have a habit of knocking them over. Right, a little bit of black ink. This watercolouring is very strong actually, so I tend to find just a little bit is needed. A lot of water. Great. So this time I've got a cactus in a pot, so I'm just going to do, oh, that maybe is a little diluted. There we go, we get the sense now. Good, and then we've got a bit of mud here, and we've got the pot. So that is pretty much it. Now I'm going to just see if I can get a little bit of green and add that in as well, just to add a little little touch of colour. Again, I'm not overworking, I'm keeping it quite loose rather than overworking this. I might just add a little bit more in there. Okay, so really loose. Think of this as your background for which you're going to work on top of in a moment. So that is that one there. And I think just for good luck, I'm going to do another one. I'd like to draw this this bottle of ink here. I think it's quite an interesting one. And I hope I can open this. Yes, there we go. This hasn't been used in a long time, so I was hoping I could still actually open it. And again, this one, I'm going to grab some of the yellow and just do a little bit of yellow to mark the actual bottle shape. Very loose. It doesn't look like much at the moment, but this is our background. So that's one way. This is our starting point. Our first thing that we do is we create a loose, rough, quick, very sketchy, very loose background, and then we're going to work the detail over the top. So I'm going to leave these to dry. There's quite a lot of water on this watercolour here, and it's just starting to bleed and blend, which I really quite like. So I'm going to leave this to dry, and I'll rejoin you again in a moment. Hello and welcome back. So my loose ink drawing has now dried in the background of my three examples here. I've got my angle poised lamp, I've got my cactus, and my ink bottle, which is at the moment just a yellow blob. So I've let these dry. It didn't actually take too long in the end. I just blotted off some of it so that there wasn't any big wet marks. I can now start to work on with layer 2, which will be a more detailed, finer line drawing, layering over the top of my loose background. So this will end up to give us a bit of depth, a bit of contrast, and just some interest and colour within our sketchbook when we're approaching drawing an object or something in general. So you're going to need your fine liner pen or a fountain pen, or even a fine paintbrush, or a pencil. Pencil is okay, it might not show up against the ink background, so I'd stick to some kind of pen. And see how you go from there. A dip pen can be great, so if you're working with the ink, you may want to then switch to black ink and start to use this kind of calligraphy dip pen, which can give a really lovely quality of line. So I might experiment with all three different mediums throughout these three different drawings. Okay, so I'm going to get started on my angle poised lamp now and start to draw in some of the detail. So I'm going to sort of begin by looking at the object which is ahead of me just off the camera and begin to sort of mark in some of the detail. Okay, so as you can see, I have now gone over in detail with using the fountain pen, all the sort of fine details, layering it over the top of the sort of mustard colour. So the mustard colour was very fluid ink, was done very quickly, and then this fine line drawing over the top took a little more time. It's still a fairly quick sketch, still a fairly rough sketch. I haven't used fine cross hatching. I probably did this in around 10 minutes. But you could, of course, spend half an hour, take your time and do a very detailed drawing on the top. The main thing we're trying to do is create this layered effect where we have a loose, fluid, free background and a tighter drawing layered over the top. It just adds an interesting effect. So I'm going to move on to my second drawing now, which is my cactus. And I'm going to use the UniPin pen, which is a fine liner pen. It's a 0.8, so it's quite a chunky one. I'm going to turn the cactus to be at the right angle for my drawing, so I'm just going to hold it in place as I sketch out this second one. Okay, so here is my second drawing that I've done using my 0.8mm UniPin pen. This was a little more stylised than the previous drawing. So what I've done is try to capture the general sense of this vase, this container, plant pot, doing the nice bold, I suppose they're sort of black little rainbow or arches in solid colour, getting the dottiness and general shape of the pot here. I wasn't too worried that the form of the pot isn't exactly right, and again I've gone for a stylised sort of line underneath here, and I'm just going to add a tiny bit more shadow there. And I use the pen in a slightly different way here to capture the spikes, because this is an incredibly fluffy cactus. It's actually quite tricky to capture. So I've just sort of used the pen much lighter so that it looks, it's going to a very fine point. So I'm using the pen in a different way. So you're trying to capture the different texture of this incredibly fluffy cactus. Okay, so that is our second drawing using the 0.8 UniPin pen, and you can see the watercolour paint ink diluted in the background has given it some colour and a lovely contrast between the boldness of the pen here on the actual vase itself. Okay, so for our final demonstration, I'm going to be using my image of a ink bottle. So you can see you can have a complete variety of different materials that you're working with, and I'm using my dip pen. This gives again a very different sort of quality of line to it. She says, make sure I actually pick up some ink. So you get a thick line where you press harder and a thinner line where you press a bit lighter. So I'm going to crack on with this drawing. Okay, so I've completed this drawing as far as I want to go for the demonstration video. And on top of my yellow blob that I did in the ink that was actually in the bottle, I've used my calligraphy pen to draw with the ink. So that is the general concept for this tutorial. It's a background in loose, quick ink, and then a more detailed drawing over the top. So let's bring back our 3 demonstrations for you to have a look at. And as you can see, I use different ink in the background of each, and I use a different fine liner drawing implement on the top of each of them. So I used my UniPin pen on this one, my fountain pen on this one, and my calligraphy pen, which I think has got lost under here, on this third one. Okay, so have a go at this. Loose background followed by detail layered over the top. Have fun.